Well, I think if the war drags on longer, I mean, this whole Iran war fiasco might even hit him harder, even than Epstein files, because you can see now even JD Vance is quietly distant himself. He hasn't appeared in many places. He hasn't said anything about the Iran war because he will jeopardize his run for 2028 if he's seen too close to Trump position on the Iran war. So yeah, I think Trump knows this. But it's Trump. It's hard to tell because one day he will tweet out he wants U.S. out. We're washing our hands. It's not our business. And the next day he will say, like today, he just said we're gonna bomb them back to Stone Ages.
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know
a
what's
certain
going on.
inconsistency. I don't think it takes a day. I think his record is 2 hours. He switched from "we're out of here" to "I'm going to blast them." Yeah, they're not consistent. In terms of JD Vance, it's interesting. I mean, when he did campaign for president, he campaigned on this issue that these are stupid wars that were costly and that were ruining America. It's very hard for him to go back on that. Of course, he said the same things about Trump, that he would never be a never Trumper, that this was a con man, the worst character ever, a habitual liar. Anything you want to say bad about Trump, he actually said. But the lure of power for many people and his backers. Remember, Peter Thiel has put about $250 million into, J.D. Vance's career. And, this is a group that, in essence, wants to bankrupt the government so they can privatize it. And they do not believe in democracy. They say that they're Curtis Yarvin, who is their main philosophical sage.
Dark enlightenment, dark enlightenment philosopher.
And then if you doubt anything I'm saying, just please go to Palantir and look up the president and listen to anything he says, and you'll be convinced that the satanic cult is alive and well, but it's in the tech bro area. But the reason I mentioned the positioning of Vance is that Rubio and Vance are perceived as rivals in terms of trying to run for the Republican ticket. I don't think at this point there's any real chance that either one of them could do it. But maybe they wait out a couple of terms or something like that, and they try to reinvent themselves. But now Rubio is tarred. He can no longer run away from Trump's record or this war. And so he's kind of lost now. He represents the traditional neocon, pro-Israel military industrial complex, but also this group, and we talked last time, that are this blood and soil group. This blood and soil refers back to a German philosopher. His works were then used as a kind of a basis for Nazism. This idea that the blood and the soil are mixed, and that any kind of foreign blood coming in is wrong. This is the basis of the Jews are outsiders, and we need to get rid of them. So we should burn up 5 million or 6 million in ovens and kill them. But it was also the reason they just persecuted Poles. Millions of Poles died in labor camps and things like that, or slaughtered, as well as gypsies, people who had disabilities. I mean, this was across the board. It wasn't just the Jews who suffered under this. It was just anybody. And what they did to Russians when they got them was unspeakable. So you're in the situation now where he can't really walk away from that. So his star has diminished. Obviously, J.D. Vance is trying to position his star to be, somewhat apart from this, to run outside. What's unusual about this is that I think from Trump's perspective, if he can't pardon himself, he's certain to pardon his family and probably many of his cabinet members. I mean, he's already, basically pardoned most of the white-collar criminals in the United States based on a little consideration here, 2 million here, 2 million there, 2 billion there, et cetera. They've been able to buy their freedom. So I don't think he have any hesitation about pardoning his cabinet members, especially if it's necessary to keep them quiet. But then there's this issue about what does he do about himself, because there are questions whether a president can pardon himself, because it in essence says the president is beyond the law. The Supreme Court gave him a gift last time by saying that if the president in his official capacity does anything, they cannot be prosecuted criminally. But this is a secondary question, and I think the Supreme Court would say no. Everybody, including the president, is subject to the law if it's outside his official capacity. And enriching yourself the way that he's doing and his family is doing is a clear case of violation of every ethic rules that there is. I mean, it's just incredible. You start seeing these spikes before he makes announcements. There are these spikes in people who obviously have some knowledge about it, and they're not trying to be subtle. They're making millions of dollars on these predictions and things like this. It can all be traced back to him and his children. So he needs somebody. I think he's hoping he can get somebody, a Republican, to pardon him. His other alternative is to resign 2 days before he leaves office. Automatically Vance would become president, and then he would have the power, just as Gerald Ford did to when he pardoned Nixon, to in essence pardon Trump. And this is an area where I'm certain he's thinking about that. He doesn't want to get too on the opposite side of J.D. Vance if he's depending on him for this pardon. So generally, if he sees somebody who's unloyal, we've seen his tantrums, find them, kill them, they're traitors and all this type of stuff. But for some reason, he's kept Vance on the side.
Yeah, I mean, the market manipulation is so blatant. He will come up right before the market opens on Monday. He will come out and make a statement about there's negotiation. We're talking with Iranians. We work out a deal. They're reasonable. And the market rallies. And then Friday after the market closes, it's like, we're going to bomb them back to Stone Ages. And every time.
Well, the market. The market did not rise after his speech.
Yeah,
let's talk about this speech.
Yes.
Carl, I mean, you look at him. I mean, this is not the same ebullient guy who was, on the campaign trail smirking and dancing his little dance and things like this. And, oh, you love me, I love you, all this stuff. He was a defeated man. A man who is prematurely aged. I mean, he's already older, but if you start looking at him, he's really haggard. And he was trying to do what his famous weave, and this is what they actually call it in the White House. They call it the Trump weave, where you take unconnected issues, for instance, inflation, and you say it's somehow to do with Iran, that Iran's a terrorist state, and therefore there's inflation. Because if you go through the speech, you'll notice that he'll mention the war, Iran, terrorism, and then he'll switch to inflation and jobs and all these expectations and things like that. So you can't really, if you're not paying too much attention, you'll get this sense that somehow it's not his fault, and that really is what he was trying to push to not only Americans but to the world. I mean, this, as we were talking about, this idea that I start a war. I don't tell you. I just go in. In fact, you think I'm working on a peace plan, and the peace plan is going so well. The Iranians have given up what I said was my problem, which was said, okay, we'll give you all of our enriched fuel, and you can take them somewhere else. And instead of going forward, he has this attack that's been planned a couple of weeks before, when Bibi Netanyahu showed up at the White House for 4 days. And they said, okay, we need to attack. So there was no good faith in the negotiations, which of course destroys trust. And this isn't the first time he's done it. He did it the last time when they were talking peace. So he attacks them, doesn't tell anybody. The world is surprised, shocked. Everybody in the world knows about the Straits of Hormuz, and especially in the United States government. If you go back 30 years, there's white paper after white paper saying, the problem with doing anything with Iran is the Straits of Hormuz. They can close it, they can mine it. They get, it's so narrow, they can have a couple of guys in, like water speedboats with rocket launched grenade launchers, and they could take out ships. I mean, ships are not, oil tankers, surprisingly, are not armored. All right. They're not there to withstand attacks by anything. They're supposed to get the oil safely from one place to another. A couple of rocket propelled grenades in the right place, and you go boom. And this is, the insurance companies have basically said, we're not going to touch this. You go through there, it's on your own. And so he starts this war, creates all these problems. All the bases in the Middle Eastern countries, especially GCC, of course, get attacked because Iran says, well, you're complicit, you're helping them. These countries in the GCC, I know many people from there, and they always said, well, an American base is a shield. No one's going to attack America. So, that was their theory until they realized that their shield had become a massive target for an attack by Israel and the U.S. on Iran. So they're in this terrible situation now where Iran is striking out at them because they say you're complicit, and it has ruined their economies. We're talking tens of trillions of dollars of investment. Think of all the sports teams and that in the Middle East that they've been buying to try to create an environment which is about sports and living there, business environment, buy condos. How many, everyone knows somebody who lives in Dubai. And they were trying to create a business environment that was safe. With these attacks, it's really hard to see how that's going to recover, at least not until there's total stability in the Middle East. So this is a real hardship for the countries around them. And but Iran is saying, look, we're alone in the world, and our only response is economic. The only thing we can do is take down the United States, and the only way we can do that is not militarily. The only way we can do that is attack the understructure of American finance, attack the area where the U.S. is soft in its $39 trillion deficit, on its dependence on the oil dollar to buy up all these treasury bonds and things like this. So they knew that if they increased the price of oil, this would have if they close the Straits of Hormuz, increases the price of oil, this would have a very, very sharp effect on the United States. The problem is countries that have nothing to do with this, who might even have great sympathies towards Iran, are also feeling the pain. You have countries that have no reserves and they're exposed. They don't have nothing. And you look in India, they're trying their best to try to keep the energy flowing, especially when it comes to tractors, which need diesel, because this is the planting season, and they just the farmers are running out. They don't want to discuss it too much, or they're trying to subsidize it, but the prices have gone up, and these farmers were not making billions of dollars. They were very much hand to mouth, and now they have increased costs. That, and also fertilizer, because from gas, from natural gas, there's a process which you strip out the nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
Yeah, the nitrogen is used for fertilizer, and that's about the stuff that was coming through the Gulf. There was about 20% of the world's fertilizer. So all of a sudden, you don't have the fertilizer you need, which is going to reduce your production anywhere from 15 to 25%. And then you don't have the petrol or the diesel to run your tractor to actually do the planting. And if you miss the planting season, then you've lost the whole crop. So this is extremely dire for many people in the world. We're expecting a food shock, regardless if tomorrow, all right, the Straits of Hormuz opened up and there was no things. The effects of this will be felt through the rest of the year. In terms of food shock, I mean, in all sorts of areas. The supply chain does not recover in a couple of days or weeks. There has been real damage done. And then you start adding up the damage that's being done to the processing facilities. All right, 20% of the world's gas comes from Qatar. 2 out of 5 of their liquefaction, they have a huge liquefaction things, which I was telling you, you have to cool down the gas in order to make it into a liquid so you can put it on a boat. That has been attacked, and 2 out of the 5 nodes, I believe, have been destroyed. And they're not doing any right now because it's under attack. So that was the stuff that was going to be used for not only heating homes and running things, but also for fertilizer. So there are huge impacts to all this. But you start looking around the Middle East at the number of plants that have been destroyed. You're talking about 5% of the world's processing capacity between oil and gas. That doesn't go away. That continues. So that's another added factor on top of the fact that you can't get it out, that even if you can, there's still going to be an increase. Now, remember, 5%, all right, in 1979, and then later with the Ukrainian war, 5% doubled the price of oil and gas. So this is a situation. There were short sparks and spikes in Europe where it went up 6 times. But I'm saying that overall, if you looked at it over the year, it literally doubled the price of those energy sources. So, I mean, no matter what happens, we're going to continue to have a lasting shock. So Trump is, wow, he's all of a sudden somebody explained it to him. Maybe they use crayons, and I don't know. I don't know how you explain anything. He doesn't read anything, so somebody would, I guess, have to tell him. He says, you started something that you cannot finish, and this is going to ruin your chances in the midterm elections. You're going to be responsible for a global recession or depression, which is even more serious. And you've alienated all of your supposed allies except Israel, who just announced that they're not going to put any boots on the ground in Iran. They're going to leave that to American soldiers if, in fact, they do go in. But I mean, Carl, what I don't understand is, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has 3.5 times more people. And it has these mountain ranges, not 1, not 2, but 3 big mountain ranges, which very, very, very difficult to get into. It doesn't matter how many bombs you have. You have different valleys and things like that. It's literally very, very difficult to have a military win there, as Iraq found out when they had the Iraq-Iran war. So to the invasion of Iraq, the first time around, there were 720,000 American troops mobilized over 6 months. And then coalition forces brought that total number up to 1 million. So let's see here. If you're going to invade Iran and it's 4 times the size and 3.5 times as many people, you're going to have a lot more troops. And that's going to take a lot of logistics. And it's going to take time. And, sending 8,000 Marines in there or threatening to them it's either insane. And you've already heard the Iranians say, bring it on. We're waiting for them. We have a very warm welcoming party arranged for them. And this is about right. There's no way 8,000 Marines no matter how much they're backed by anything, can actually go in and be a substantial invasion force. It's not even clear that they could take Karg Island. But as I said, they have the island. Iran continues to have revenue from, basically taking tolls from any ships coming in and out of the straits. So none of this makes sense to me. That's why I said at the very beginning, when people were saying, "Oh, do you think there's going to be a war?" I said, "No." I said the reason there won't be a real war. I thought he might like fire a few missiles into the air and claim victory and run home again, like he did during the last 12-day war, because there's no way out. Once you light this dumpster on fire, it does not go out. It just spreads, and that's what we've seen. It went from a war with Iran now to a regional war, and now it's becoming international.
The crazy thing is, there are U.S. planners who are well aware of this because I just saw on Twitter somebody digged out an interview with Brzezinski back in 2012, where Brzezinski said Iran can hurt us a lot. Can you imagine what consequences would be to us? If Iraq was massively destabilized, if Bahrain was set on fire, if the northeastern oil fields in Saudi Arabia were attacked, the consequences, the cost would be cumulative. The global economy will be affected. So we're playing with fire here. So they knew. There are people in the U.S. upper echelon that knew the consequences of this war.
They had reports coming out in 2022. This is, like I said, they've gone back 30 years. Coincidentally, about 30 years ago is when Netanyahu decided that he did not want to negotiate peace for Israel. What he wanted to do was basically weaken all countries around Israel. And that, the last piece of that puzzle was, of course, Iran. But, because it's 1,000 kilometers away, they couldn't, and there's only 7.5 million Jews and the 92 million Iranians, they couldn't do it themselves. They had to rely on the US. And they've, 7 presidents said no. Why? Because over that period, every single intelligence and military group has said, can't do it. The damage would be, outstanding. I mean, Brzezinski wasn't saying anything new. He was simply repeating, the studies that had been done over this long period of time. And, but Donald Trump did it. The only reason I can think that he did it was that he wanted to keep the Epstein files off the front page, which it did do for a few days. But, the idea of pedophilia, and there's so many names in there, and it looks like there's an elite cabal which is running the U.S. and at the same time that they're pedophiles. I mean, this is not going to go away. I don't know why he thinks it will. Even if he leaves, he says he's going to leave. It doesn't matter what he does. Iran will continue to use the Straits of Hormuz as basically as a lever, and also to replace the lost economic value of their oil. That continues. So, his latest thing, as we knew even before he went into Iran, is that he wanted to take over Cuba. Now, Cuba cannot defend itself. It's in blackout. It's being rationed with, oil. I mean, the Russians have sent a tanker there, and they promised to send more. Mexico has sent rice, and China has sent boatloads of rice. Mexico has been sending intermediate goods, spare parts, and things like this, and a little bit of energy. But he, at any time, the U.S. can go in there, and they can take over an island that's been impoverished because of the sanctions that we put on them. And it's really a shame. I mean, I don't know why he thinks that will be enough to keep Epstein off the front pages. I doubt it will. I mean, they can't put up much of a fight. They don't have any food. Even if they retreat to the jungle, they still have to eat. They still have to have armaments and things like that. And they might be prepared, but it's just not enough, unfortunately. But it could lead to a very uncomfortable situation where you still have an insurgency, which is going against whatever U.S. interests. Basically, what happened in Afghanistan. And remember, I mean, the 350,000 troops that we trained in Afghanistan, local troops, plus our own troops, were defeated by 30 to 40,000 Taliban people. They didn't have tanks. They basically just had jeeps with machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. They didn't have a navy. They certainly didn't have an air force. And yet we were traced out. So it gives you the idea of the asymmetry of war as it has developed. Drones and missiles, technology have replaced the tank, the submarine, and the aircraft carrier. So it's a changing world, but for some reason, the Pentagon hasn't quite caught up there.